Without even looking at the secretary, Bella headed for her father's office. The secretary tried to stop her, saying that the director of the company ordered not to disturb him, because he would be very busy. But Bella only looked down at the woman and said that the secretary was nobody here. Then Bella's father came out of his office and asked what was going on. The girl immediately demanded the secretary be fired because she wouldn't let her go into her father's office. But the father didn't like his daughter's insolent behavior. He asked for respect for his personal secretary, because she was doing her job and was in the workplace. The father was rather embarrassed in front of his employee, especially when Bella said that the secretary had no duties, and that all she had to do was to serve coffee. The woman heard those hurtful words. She lowered her eyes and went out into the corridor, leaving the father and daughter alone. Bella turned to her father with a winning smile, and said that her credit card was empty and she needed money. The man shook his head disapprovingly and said he would talk to her about it at home. Then he went back to his office, and Bella had no choice but to go home. But she told herself that tonight her father would surely regret what he had done to her. The father raised Bella alone. His wife died of lung cancer about 10 years ago. Since then, the man tried to do everything to ensure that his beloved daughter did not need anything. He tried to compensate for the absence of her mother with material benefits, as he was a very famous and wealthy businessman. And as very often happens, the daughter grew up very spoiled. At first, the father thought that his daughter would grow up and change with the years. He felt very strongly about this and tried to talk to his daughter many times. But nothing worked. In the evening, after an unpleasant scene in her father's office, Bella never waited for her father and went to bed. In the morning she was awakened early by a phone call. She picked up the phone in her sleep and heard that it was her father. He said there had been an attempt on his life, and that she was in great danger too. She had to leave the house as soon as possible. Her father asked her not to call him for a while, he would call her himself. He also said that a man would be coming to bring her money, new clothes and a telephone. In addition, it turned out that her father had rented a room from an old lady in a small town especially for such dangerous situations. He told her to take the bus there, and not to tell anyone about it. In addition, Bella had to leave all her belongings and her car at home. As a farewell, he promised that as soon as things had calmed down, he would take her back. At first, the young woman did not believe the news. But her father's voice was very excited, and it seemed to her that everything was very serious. Bella waited for the courier, then changed her clothes and went to the specified address. She felt very uncomfortable in the cheap clothes her father had sent her. She also didn't like the bus she had to take. It seemed like a scary ride to her because she had never used public transport. She tried not to touch anything and couldn't wait for this bus trip to be over for her. Finally, the bus brought her to the necessary station. Bella stormed out of the bus, but the surprises didn't end there. When she arrived at the address, it turned out to be an old house on the outskirts of town, practically in the woods. She rang the doorbell and the landlady came out. She was a pretty woman in her 50s. She immediately realized who Bella was, and let her in. The woman introduced herself as Rachel and led her to show Bella her room. The house, in spite of the fact that it was very ugly from the outside, was very modern and well maintained. But the girl was very surprised when they walked through the house and came to the backyard. The woman led Bella further into the back garden. In the shade of the trees, there was a small guest house no larger than an ordinary trailer. When they went inside, Bella was taken aback, and then demanded better accommodation. It was obvious that no one had lived in the house for a long time. All the furniture was old but well preserved. A thick layer of dust covered almost everything. The woman apologized and said that no one had warned her that there would be guests, otherwise she would have cleaned up beforehand. Bella's father had unofficially bought this house on her property years ago, and not a soul knew about it. Rachel had to leave for work by now, so she brought a tray of food from home and everything necessary for cleaning, and then she left Bella alone. Bella sat down in a dusty chair and stared blankly at the leaving woman. Then she took out her cell phone to call her father. But she remembered that he had strictly told her not to call him, it could be dangerous. The girl could not believe that she had to live here. It seemed like some kind of bad dream. Day after day dragged on. Bella languished with idleness. She didn't go out, except occasionally for a walk in the forest. Even the groceries Rachel bought herself. The woman was very surprised to find out that Bella couldn't cook even basic meals. Then she offered to teach her. Bella didn't care what to do anymore, as long as she did something instead of sitting and watching TV. Especially she was beginning to enjoy talking to Rachel. To Bella's surprise, this woman from a rundown town was smart and kind, very well read and with a positive attitude. In a few days, Bella was very enthusiastic about her new occupation. And when Rachel came back from work, a delicious dinner prepared by Bella was waiting for her at home. A few days later Rachel had a day off and started her garden. It must be said that she had a lot of roses of all kinds, beautiful bushes and trees. It all needed a lot of care, but for Rachel it was her passion and hobby. Her house could have been mistaken for a giant flower bed from afar, so full of flowers. When she saw Rachel working in the garden, Bella went out to get some fresh air. The girl came closer and asked what she was doing. The woman could talk enthusiastically for hours about her garden and the plants in it. Bella did not realize how in an hour she was trimming roses, removing blossoming hydrangeas, and watering potted flowers. And after work the women were sitting on the terrace, drinking delicious home tea and enjoying the warm summer day and pleasant tiredness from the work done. Bella sat in a rocking chair and thoughtfully said that life is a strange thing. Such work in the kitchen or in the garden always seemed boring and uninteresting to her. And now she was sitting there, proud of her new skills and success. Rachel didn't answer anything, just grinned. And then suggested to go to a real job. Bella laughed out loud and said she was ready to jump right in. The next day they got up early and had breakfast. From the garage Rachel got a second bicycle for Bella. The young woman was very surprised, because she had never understood how Rachel got to work during those few weeks of staying with her. But Bella did not ask any questions. It was like an adventure for her, especially since she probably hadn't cycled since she was 10 years old. The women arrived at some ancient estate, surrounded by an old park and fenced with a high wrought iron fence. Bella was surprised to realize that it was a retirement home. She looked questioningly at Rachel, and she said that she worked here as a nurse. And Bella could help if she still wanted to. The girl was puzzled. The idea of caring for the elderly did not appeal to her at all, but she decided that since she was here, she would try. The day flew by unnoticed. Bella delivered food to the residents. Then she read books aloud to them and played checkers and Scrabble. In the evening she listened to their stories about life during an evening walk in the park. Bella did not recognize herself. She had never cared for anyone in her life. Even her dog at her father's house was looked after by the housekeeper and gardener. Upon returning home, Bella asked when Rachel had her next shift. Rachel smiled contentedly. So a few more weeks went by. Bella went with Rachel to the nursing home every workday. She helped the staff to the best of her ability wherever she was called. She managed to work in the kitchen as a dishwasher and an assistant cook. She was also needed in the laundry room. And she even helped the gardener plant flowers along the alleys. And that's on top of spending time with the residents themselves. One day, after a day of work, Rachel and Bella went out the gate. At once she saw a car in the parking lot, which was painfully familiar, and her father came out of it. Seeing him, Bella sobbed, and her father said that everything is all right now, and they can go home. He looked at his daughter and was very happy in his heart. The man knew what she had been doing all that time. But now he saw with his own eyes that in front of him stood not that flighty girl, but a mature young woman. Bella began to talk gibberishly about what had happened to her. Her father listened and realized that everything was for a reason. He wouldn't tell her that he had set it all up on purpose. After all, it made his daughter realize that she should respect other people and their work. That was exactly how he wanted his daughter to be. After she returned home, Bella got a job as a manager at her father's company. She stopped spending his money and decided that she would do everything on her own. Bella did not stop contacting Rachel. She visited her periodically, and like in the past, Bella and Rachel would get on their bicycles and go to the retirement home. And in the evening, to the sound of forest birds, they cooked together a delicious pie, and drink tea on the terrace.